Hello and welcome to the Record Celtic podcast. My name is Daniel Conn. I'm delighted to be joined on this week's show by Record Sports' Fraser Wilson and Graeme Young. Guys, how are you?
Good afternoon. I'm very well, thanks, Daniel.
Yourself, Graeme?
All good, Daniel. Glad to be on.
Excellent. My favourite
Put your
of
face there.
the week.
Delighted, mate.
It's been a busy week for Celtic, as it usually is. And Graeme, I think probably best to start. We're recording this on Thursday. Last night's game against St Mirren. Again, big win for Celtic, but for a lot of the game, it looked like it could be points dropped.
Yeah, it's the type. If you put it in context, beating the third place team in the league, team who hadn't lost an away game all season, it's a good victory. The first half was actually pretty good. I felt for the most part. I know St Mirren scored, but there was a tempo about Celtic that maybe these games that Rodgers' teams in his first reign and now have dropped points in, or the St Johnstone game would be the one example this season where there was maybe a lack of tempo, but that wasn't a factor in the first half. It was actually in the second half it felt that it started to go awry a wee bit. I thought St Mirren did a great job engaging Celtic high up the pitch and pressed. I think Postecoglou said it last year in the cup game. I think it ended up maybe 4-0, but for long spells, Stephen Robinson's team were quite aggressive, pushing Celtic back, and it wasn't until the subs that really changed the game. That was a big moment when it feels the Celtic squad stretched. Thought Yang was brilliant off the bench. Odenholm, who I think Rodgers is a big fan of, and it's just been maybe biding his time. He was excellent as well. His little slide rule pass for the winner, and obviously as well coming off the bench to fire home. So I think that's a massive element of the game, that the impact of those three substitutes. While there's probably also a worry for the fact that I know James Forrest got the big build up for the manager about how his pace is still equivalent to Rise Maeda, but maybe James Forrest starting games for Celtic in 2023 is indicative of where this squad is right now. I know he was a role player under Postecoglou, but for him to kind of come into the starting lineup last night while, say, Jota's left the club, Abada's out, I think it shows with that. But the big highlight, I think, was the impact of those three subs in the second half. Yang's an interesting player. He's tall. He's not some dainty winger. He's got a bit of something about him, and nice touches, nice cut inside. Holm looks a proper talent, and I think O's been coming close to that goal for a while.
You know, it's obviously just, this is a really silly point, but Odin Thiago Holm, and he's Thiago because he just likes Thiago Alcantara. So he picked that name himself.
Yeah.
That Fraser?
There's not many Norwegians called Kyogo, is there? So.
What do you think of that, Fraser? Is that?
He's at home with that name. That's what I would say, mate. Right, moving on. What was the question?
No, that was it. That was it, to be honest. We'll come back to the subs in a wee minute, because I definitely think
It's a great point.
You make a great point, Graeme. One player, Fraser, that is obviously at a big crossroads in his Celtic career, it seems, is David Turnbull. Scored a brilliant goal last night, but I think I'm right in saying his contract's up at the end of the season.
Yeah.
He's never really kneeled down a starting berth. I mean, I don't know. Do you think he'll get a new deal at Celtic? Or?
I think he's one of those players that every club, any club in Scotland would want on their books. He's a special talent. I don't think anyone would deny that. With the ball at his feet, he's a magician. I mean, that goal summed him up. I think whenever you see David Turnbull shaping in that area, shaping to shoot, you know, one or two things is going to happen. Either the keeper's going to pull off a world date or that net's going to bulge. So I think he's a very, very important squad player for Celtic. To balance that, I can't see him ever being a regular starter in the midfield three. Not with the pace and intensity Celtic like to play at in the big games. But for somebody to bring off the bench, I think, it is a crucial part of the squad. And the cliche is it's a squad game now, isn't it? So, kind of to answer your question, I would say, but I think he's deserving of a new contract. And I'm pretty sure Brendan Rodgers has sort of hinted at that this season, is he not? That he'd like him to stick about a bit longer. I mean, this next period with Rio Hatate being out for 2 or 3 months is crucial for Turnbull to, if he does want to be a regular starter, to prove what he brings to the table, doesn't it? And he needs to prove it game in, game out, especially in the big games. That is where I just wonder if he's got the quality to be a Celtic starter. But what are his stats? About 25, 26 goals in just over 100 games for Celtic, most of them coming off the bench. It's not a bad return, and I think he is a big player and deserving of a contract.
He's clearly really really talented player. But just on what Fraser said there, Graeme, I don't know if I'm 100% right in this, but I feel like whenever he does start a big game, he tends to get a wee bit lost in the middle of the park. Is that fair? And how would you rate Turnbull's time at Celtic?
I think the goal last night was a peach, but I don't think he had his best game last night. I think the problem with Turnbull on the same side as Palmer, not to get too deep divey tactics on it, but they were making the same kind of runs and showing in the same side. So Palmer's coming in his right foot, Turnbull's doing the same, trying to turn on. He's right foot as well, so getting a bit kind of log jammed on that side of the pitch. I think Bernardo's a player of interest, but with Hatate out, it feels like to me this is a chance for Odenholm to kind of another player to leapfrog Turnbull. I think Turnbull's skills are obvious. Like, he's one of the best finishers outside of the box. You'll see, like, it's a rare talent. And I think it's a dying art in the game as well. Everything's so micromanaged in terms of how to break teams down, where a guy can just open his body and put it in the top corner. But I think you can see his limitations in this team. That's not to say that Turnbull left Celtic and found, I don't like downgrade him too much, but a team at the top end of the English Championship, you could easily see a David Turnbull highlights video of 15 to 20 goals over a 46 game season, as Fraser touched upon his goal record. But I just think for the way Ange played, he probably wasn't the perfect fit, and even more so maybe Rodgers. I think there's this real break between the lines, up and down the pitch element that's needed for the three-man midfield that's interchangeable. I think that's where Turnbull just comes up a bit short, which is unfortunate for him. I think he's obviously a talent. I think nights like last night, he's invaluable actually for maybe
as an impact player. Graeme, it's almost become a position of its own, isn't it? Somebody 100%. To throw on when you need a piece of magic. A really, really important aspect of any squad. I mean, if the question was, is he deserving of a new contract? I mean, would you give him one?
I think the quote is always a big thing these days with the Scottish, like the homegrown rule. I think that would obviously factor in, but I think in this case it's quite particular for the reason I think he's at the age where he needs to go and play every week. It's not just, I think it's more compelling than just, I think he's got ambitions of his own. He's been at Celtic, there's been loads of times where he's impressed, but just to play every week, I think, I just look at Odenholm. I think the words that Rodgers said about Odenholm are quite significant. He's talking about the batch of new signings. He was very quick to praise Holm, and you can see last night that little slide rule pass and other wee moments as well. And I know it's been fleeting. I just think he gives the Celtic midfield just a little bit more of what Rodgers likes, where Turnbull's qualities are obvious, and as Fraser says, he's an impact player. I just would be surprised if Turnbull gets a nod if Holm keeps progressing in the next, and Bernardo as well potentially. But I just feel there's something about Holm and Riley McGregor could be the three we had that on the sideline. And then who knows, maybe January for, I know they talk maybe about the guys who don't, Rodgers maybe touching the guys that aren't even getting in the mix now, but I think Turnbull's contract starting to wind down. I think it could be a player who maybe departs in January. You
wouldn't get a fraction of the 4 million or whatever they shelled out for Turnbull then if he leaves in January.
Yeah,
it's a matter of months left in his contract.
I know.
But, I mean, you could flip it and ask if that's the reason to hand him a new contract as well, and maybe get another year or two out of him before he moves on. But
I wonder as well, if you're him, 24, would you sign up for another 4 years and being a bit part player? I don't know.
You can't see inside the player's head, see what motivates him, can you? He's at a big club, he's getting Champions League football, albeit minutes off the bench. I mean, what's the alternative? How many players, and I think David Turnbull would be a prime example, go down to that English Championship and it swallows them up, and you barely hear them again.
No.
I'm trying to keep my eye on the likes of Kevin Nisbet that have gone down there lately, and he's doing not bad. He's had a couple of problems with injuries, but that league, because it's 2 games, we talk about 2 games a week up here for the teams that qualify in Europe. These championship teams in England have to play 2 games a week throughout the season, for an entire season, and sometimes it's just too much. And I just wonder if that'd be a good move for a David Turnbull.
Another talking point last night, game was Kyogo. Didn't score, obviously, but was still in the thick of the action. What did you make of his yellow card for the clash with Marcus Fraser, which I thought he got body checked for that? I thought it was a bit weird.
Aye, that was weird. That one. That was you're probably right. It was a weird night for him in the sense he's not used to minimal touches. Is nothing new to him in some games. But his pressing was good, and that was a good example of that. It seemed a bit a weird decision at the time, you know, and I think as well, you know, with the home fans and maybe John beating the weekend as well. Now he's a Celtic fan at Rangers, where he would point to two legitimate penalty decisions. There's always got to be a pantomime element to that. But I think, to be fair to the referee, for most of the game, I think he called the game correctly. But I think the yellow card was a wee bit harsh on Kyogo. And you can see as well, I know he can get frustrated maybe when he makes his runs and the pass isn't spotted, but normally when he's quite docile when a decision goes against him. But it was quite peeved last night. You can see that as well, that it upped him. So I think he felt aggrieved. I didn't think it was a foul. I just think it was play on in that situation. Or as you made the point, maybe a foul the other way. But and then obviously it was instant in the second half that I don't think get much coverage at the time. Penalty shout, and it's one of those ones. The more you watch it, the more you think, oh, there's maybe something in that as well. I don't know how Fraser viewed that one, the penalty incident in the second half. Or...
I'm always the strongest defender of defences and referees, and not being sucked into giving soft penalties and free kicks. It's been a my life watching football. But in this instance, I reckon Kyogo was hard done by. As you say, the more you watch it, the more you realise Big Michael Mandron's quite lucky. He's actually got his hand in Kyogo's face or throat. I'm not suggesting he's blooming choked him or anything, but he's definitely made contact with Kyogo's face, which has made the striker go down. When you see some of the penalties that have been handed out recently, for me, VAR should have got involved in that one, and it was quite a blatant one when you watch it back. That should have been a penalty.
I forgive Beaton for missing it. You know,
I always do with the referee. I mean, corners these days are an absolute nightmare.
But that's what annoys me about VAR, though.
Oh,
surely someone should have stepped in and even looked at it. Who knows?
Giving up with VAR.
Graeme, you mentioned earlier Yang. I've got written down here Graeme's love affair with Yang.
He's really good. Honestly, he's got to be a good player. The problem Celtic have now, right, is with Jota gone, they've got, if you could turn Palma and Yang into one winger, you'd have a 30 to 40 million pound winger. Palma's delivery is excellent. He's a bit one-paced. And I think the only, maybe so far, just watching Palma, maybe seeing all the tricks that he has, in the sense we know what he is. He likes to cut inside. He likes those clever through balls. But Yang just brings something else. And that little bit of magic at Pittodrie for Matt O'Reilly's goal, where he dragged back and crossed, I think that hinted towards a player of real potential. The problem is he's not the finished article, but there was loads to like about when he came onto the pitch. He hugs the touchline, the proper winger, can go down the outside, likes to cut in, he had 2 shots cutting in. Then he had a couple of passes that went astray, but the impact was telling, and I think that's what really mattered last night, that as an impact sub, he really made the difference. So he just got in. The size that he's big, I mentioned this earlier on, he's big and strong. He's not, doesn't look like a light winger where you think he's going to get bumped off the ball. He's very good at actually when he gets contact, he can almost rolls with the ball. So somebody bumps into him and he just takes a touch and goes with it and uses that to get past. I think there's no reason why he can't become a proper Celtic player. The only thing with Yang compared to maybe a Jota is he's learning on the job, and the way Jota was, even after that tough season at Valladolid, the experience at Benfica, he was just further ahead in his development. But I think with the way Yang plays, I'd be shocked if he doesn't reach his potential, because there's so much there. And it's just now trying to balance between Palma brings plenty to the game to get that balance right. Maeda as well. Obviously, Maeda's work rate's unquestionable. But there is an argument that in these games against teams that are kind of in their trenches, Maeda sometimes struggles. He's better in the big game. He's best in really big games at Ibrox, European games. No. It's just for Rodgers now with a bad injured. Forrest probably past his best. I think that's Mikey Johnson finding it tough to really impress. You've got Yang, Palma, Maeda, Johnson, Forrest. They're all fighting for minutes, but I think Yang's one persevering with. He could easily start at Dingwall on Saturday and flatter to deceive. He's just in that stage of his development. But something about last night, the way the game was poised, he was just a real live wire and brought something pretty exciting to the game. And I think there's a player there as well. But that's, people talk about Celtic and they're dominating like this would do, 12 titles in 13 years if they win it this season. But the type of players, the profile, they are taking risks with players. Odin Holm, Valerenga, Yang from South Korean football, same way O. It's a big risk to merge all. I know you've got your Cal McGregor, Carter Vickers, Mattarelli's now in a major star as well, Kyogo, you point to the team, but I think Yang, there's just a nice balancing act in the next few months between game time and not putting the full pressure on him to deliver as well. But I think there's plenty of signs of optimism that he's going to be a proper player.
I think he looks really good as well. I think he's got great feet. But on the other hand, Fraser, we mentioned Forrest starting. I've loved James Forrest. He's been a brilliant player for Celtic. But does the fact he's starting games now underline Celtic need strengthening in January? Was that harsh?
I'd argue that's one area where they don't really. I'm surprised to see James Forrest starting. It's almost like, I could be completely wrong, but it's almost like he's been given a last chance to prove he's still at it. He's only 32, so he shouldn't be heading for anywhere near the knackers yard yet. I'm not suggesting he is. I just think the pace and intensity that we've spoken about before, the Celtic play at, James Forrest's best years seem to be in the past. Now, the way he's performing, I sincerely hope he can prove they're not when he comes back, but he's yet to do anything this season that's really to suggest that he's still at the level he was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. However, for your point, I think Celtic do need to invest in January in certain areas. But one that I'm really excited about seeing, and he's had a pretty hellish time of it since he moved to Celtic, is Marco Tilio. And having spoken to a couple of folk in Australia, a couple of folk here that played against him in Australia when he first arrived, everyone says this is a guy that's got magic feet, crucially two really good feet, a good ball carrier to get you up the park. So if you add him into the fray when he's fit, which we're led to believe isn't too far away, if he can hit the ground running, if Lila Bada comes back fit and back to his best, you've got Yang. Graeme's gone to great lengths to explain. I think Lewis Palmer is starting to show that he's a very good signing. And obviously you get Dyson Maeda running teams into the ground out wide. I don't think that's one area Celtic need to worry about when everyone's fit.
The Tilio one is strange, Graeme, isn't it? It's a bit weird.
I think Tilio comes under there was a message for Rodgers about he's in no rush to, with certain players, to push them. I think the injury as well, he would like a period of acclimation to what it's like to play in Glasgow and the rules. But I think with Tilio's got, again, compared to some of this, like a Bernardo or a Home, he's played a lot of football in the last couple of years. And I think but I think that maybe the one issue, and I think it's hard to deny that a lot of these wingers, they've all got plus points that are obvious, but there's also teething problems as well. So it's that balance, and I probably disagree with Fraser there. It's a one position, and I know they've got plenty of options, but I would go big on a proper, if you're looking linked to a Daniel Podence in the summer, I think a proper 8-9, if you're going to spend your budget on a player in that team, then you get your top winger in with, I think you're strong in the middle with Kyogo and all, and then you can start to bring on, you can make the best. So say in the European game, you winger might add a Kyogo, and then you've got a Palmer and Yang reserve, Tilio as well. Maybe it's a hard case to make so many options, but I just feel Brendan Rodgers' teams have always had top wingers. You can go back through every team. That's been like his first Celtic team, Forrest, Sinclair and Roberts were a kind of highlight of a very strong team, and I think they're just, since Jota's departure, I think that bona fide number, first pick in the team sheet out wide, and then you kind of build around there the options the next guys come through. And I think it would actually help a guy like Yang. Palmer is a strong option, but perhaps he's not a get nailed on starter at this point. I think that's where I would go first in the summer and January. There's an option to buy a player of real quality. That's where I would go.
I like what Palmer's produced in the big games in the Champions League, but see if you had a wad of cash in January, Graeme, you would go wide rather than another number 9.
I'd probably go wide before the 9. Probably after my big point there, I think goalkeeper still, obviously, that's a long-term plan. Find a real number.
Money on another goalkeeper at the moment, though.
No, I would. I don't know. I would think differently. I think it's time for. I know Hart's done a good job, but I think the end could be quite immediate when it comes. And I don't think Bain or Siegrist are number one quality, so I think that's off. But if you're going back to up front, it's got to be, I think, a proper. And wingers, what is a winger these days as well? Like inside forward, they come in and do different things. I think a versatile starting forward would make a real difference to Celtic the second half of the season.
Well, on that, obviously got the winner. But, I mean, is he a serious alternative to Kyogo? If Kyogo gets injured, you're shaking your head there, Fraser.
No, that's where I feel they need to go out and sign another Giakoumakis. The one thing who obviously brings you is that physical presence, and you need the alternatives, obviously, in this day and age. Well, we always did. Up front, big guy, wee guy goes back to pre-war days. So, it gives you that alternative. Interestingly, spoke after the game last night. This is for tomorrow's paper, so I'll not give too much away. But it does give an insight into his struggles this season, and hopes that this is now a starting point for him. But you can read all about that tomorrow. I think it's been there for all to see that it's not produced this season. But that finish last night was the type of finish I like to see for strikers. It's great to see Turnbull hitting a ball for 25 yards into the top corner, but see that neat move into O's feet, shuffles it, steadies himself and slots it home. I think that's everything a good striker should be able to do, and that goal must give him a surge of confidence, because I thought when I saw him last season from time to time, it did look like he had really good feet. I remember there was one instance up at Ross County in particular where a long punt for Joe Hart, he took it and turned the defender in one movement. I thought, this boy looks a player. Since then, he's kind of flattered to deceive a wee bit, but hopefully that goal can set him off and being that alternative to Kyogo you mentioned. But I think if Celtic have a wad of cash to go for one big signing in January, they do need a third centre forward. Somebody that guarantees goals like Giakoumakis did, because I don't think O will ever quite be at that level.
Do you agree, Graeme?
No, I think O's good. Hey. I think he's really good. I think the problem he's been when he's been coming off the bench is you can feel the palpable tension every time he gets those half chances. And the one Iwata put in the top bin at Hearts is a good example. He's just too quick in the draw to try and get it in. But last night, his goal record last season was decent. Goals at Tynecastle, Easter Road, 2 against Aberdeen.
7 goals, it's good.
Complete appearances. Again, this season, Kyogo's got to start. That's my argument against a third striker. You've got an elite striker in Kyogo. O's not as much of an alternative as Giakoumakis was, but Giakoumakis was a late developer. These goals started to come late for him after kind of years in the wilderness, failed to really make it at AEK Athens and so forth. But I think his hold-up play has been good at times. Like sometimes he's really good sometimes. Chest, pass, make the move, spin inside. And some of his runs, everyone talks about Kyogo's runs, but O does, do you know, like the really good teams or the really good strikers, he's great at that kind of dummy into the front post, kids on he's going back and then spins back to the front. And I think there will be goals. The more he play, if Kyogo, say for instance Kyogo, a mild injury for a couple of weeks and no started, he has got that type of potential player that could bang in 3 or 4.5. He's always in the right place. He's running across the 6-yard box. There's loads of goals in him, and I think Rodgers' comments last night were quite positive in the sense that he liked the makeup, his character, how he followed the kind of diet and stuff that comes a modern football player. And I think there's plenty to like about him as well. I think it's been hard. It's the Giakoumakis shaped hole in Celtic fans' hearts. It's been hard to fill because he was a bit of a surprise hit, wasn't he? In the sense like came in late, doubts about Dutch football, and then just a smash hit. Fans loved him, but obviously O's a cheaper at the age range and profile, everything that comes with it. I think it's been hard to kind of fill that gap that Giakoumakis left. And Giakoumakis played a massive role in the first title under Postecoglou, so there's obviously a real affection there. But I think there's no reason why O can't kick on for here. I like him. That's why, again, back down to the fact that I think these two strikers are pretty solid, and then you bring in a wide forward with goals. I think that would be Celtic in a pretty decent position.
I think we should finish on the Green Brigade. Obviously, don't want to get bogged down in the politics of it all because it's a football podcast, but it's a distraction that Celtic don't need, Graeme. I think it's fair to say. How do you see it?
I think this has obviously been it's bubbled over in the last couple of days, but this is a long running issue between a board and you see the biggest part, but obviously a sizable element in the form of the ultras, right? Who would be very quick to point, and rightly so, charity drives, real colour, imagination and tifos, not always politically based, right? So this is an argument as well, and I think this is one thing that Celtic fans I've spoke to have been really strong on, that they don't necessarily agree with everything with the Celtic board, they don't necessarily agree with everything the Green Brigade on general issues and this issue in particular. There's many Celtic supporters who are in support of the Palestinian plight or people in Gaza, right? And I've got no reason against flag displays at games, right? And maybe feel the board are letting the club down by not allowing that when maybe they make the point about Ukraine a couple of years earlier, and there's a real grey area when it comes to politics and football. But there's also an element of Celtic fans who feel they probably can't speak up over a feeling that's widespread in the Celtic sport that the Green Brigade do not represent them on every issue. That when the Green Brigade speak, they feel they're speaking to the wider Celtic support. And there's a lot of guys who would be left-leaning people and believe in issues across the globe that maybe affect people that are in minorities, but don't agree with the Green Brigade and the biggest issues as well. And I think when the statement from Celtic, whatever you say about Celtic as a club, the statement, the 6-point statement that kind of read through the litany of acts they felt were deemed unacceptable by the Green, you can't argue on that. If Celtic had a flimsy 2-part statement, you go, hold on a minute, but Celtic have been, I think, making a case for a long time at AGMs as well. Peter Law, other board members have on the record said there's elements of the Green Brigade they enjoy and bring to the club, but this isn't to pin it all on the recent events of Palestine. I think when you look at the stuff that pointed at Motherwell away, the break into the stadium, they say there was an incident at Hibs as well at the weekend. I think it's a complicated issue that's maybe getting simplified over a singular flag, and I think many supporters don't know what way to go in certain things with this, because it's uber complex, it's uber layered, and people that might not be pro Celtic board normally might be pro in this instance, or people that are pro Green Brigade might. It's just very complex, and I think that's like the wilder world as well. These issues between Israel and Palestine, you get a player like Wael Abada, Brendan Rodgers talks about taking him out for dinner. He's protecting a decent young man who he knows, and after the flag displays, that's how complex it is. And Celtic have had multiple players from Israel play for them in recent years who have been well supported by the club. It's not as if these players have been ostracised or treated by even that element of the support. But then there's a wider issue at play. Celtic have a reputation to keep. UEFA's a big thing here as well. Let's not kid ourselves. Peter Law's been a big player in the European Club Association, building a mover and shaker in big meetings, and then they're looking at UEFA's view on political statements. There is just so many issues at play, and I don't think Green Brigade, for all their benefits, that fans could be pro Green Brigade in about 8 or 9 issues, but this one, I think the feeling is that it's not just the Palestine statement. There is issues here, and they can't be allowed to run roughshod over the club every time. But I think there's still an element of support, and rightly so, for certain parts of it as well. So you could sit here, Dan, for 2 hours. You get multiple different arguments, but for everyone to just, it's not a black and white issue. It really is the most complex issue the club's faced. Just politically, where they stand, where the board stand, where the ultras stand, and where the general population of the support stand. And that's what it is. That's a very, very complex issue.
I think that was a lovely answer. Fraser, they wouldn't have wanted to ban the Green Brigade. That's not something Celtic wanted to do.
No, but how many times can you let a group of supporters, a small group of supporters, a small segment of your support continually defy your pleas, your orders, whatever you want to call it, be it flags, be it pyros, constant fines coming in, political messages. It just seems like it's getting worse and worse and worse, and the chasm, the gap between the two sides is getting bigger and bigger, and these instances are becoming more and more common. It's just a bad look for the club as a whole. I think the two could really do to sit down, get around the table and thrash this out. But
I think that's the biggest issue, Fraser. I think this is the breaking point, and I think everyone, or the key players on both sides, would be acutely aware this is the breaking point, because it's been alliances over the years. Like, there's been an element, an acceptance that the Green Brigade bring plenty in the eyes of the board, when maybe the pyros you touched upon, the fines. But to me, both sides are entrenched in their stance now. I think there is no obvious path to diplomacy for here on. I just don't feel that. The way you look at other stuff as well, touched on that where the Green Brigade are housed in section 111, there's been talk of a Celtic end, a full rail seating, and the dream of that becoming. I think these things are definitely on the back burner right now. You could have two family members standing, and one could be sympathetic to the board stance, one could be sympathetic to the Green Brigade in this issue, but change on the other. I think that's the point. That it's not. This feels like a significant moment in the club's history of an ultras group who've been a massive part of the club over the past decade.
But there are guys that stand in that standing section that are sick of them, I'm told. And look, I mean, are they not starting to act like they're bigger than the club themselves? As I go back to my original point, how many times can you justify what the club's asking you to do? You know that fines are incoming for pyros, which are getting out of hand at a lot more clubs than just Celtic, may I add. Look at Wednesday night at Dens Park, a complete fire hazard. But they just do it anyway, despite the pleas not to. And surely anyone with a sane mind could see this ban was coming.
Mm-hmm. Aye, I think that brings us to the end of today's podcast, guys. Graeme Young, Fraser Wilson, it's always a pleasure. We'll be back next week. Thanks very much for listening. Cheers.